My name is Jessica Taylor. I'm 34 years old, married, and the mother of two children who had spent the week making handmade cards for my father. At 11:25 the night before Father's Day, my brother tagged me in our family group chat. "Stay home tomorrow. We're tired of your side of the family." Before I could decide whether I had read it correctly, Mom liked the message. Dad added a laughing emoji. My sister followed with, "Honestly, it'll be more peaceful." I stared at the screen while they returned to discussing the mountain trip I had booked for all of us in August. They debated restaurants, cabin rooms, and who would sit near the windows on the train. No one asked whether my husband or children were hurt. No one even paused. So I typed, "Message received." My brother reacted with a thumbs up. Then he joked that I was finally learning not to make everything dramatic. They laughed again. What they had forgotten was that the cabin, train tickets, rental cars, and every deposit for that trip were under my name. They had also forgotten that the Father's Day gathering was being held at a lakeside property I owned, stocked with food I had ordered, and serviced by vendors I had paid. I opened the travel account, removed every guest except my husband and children, and confirmed the changes. 5 minutes later, the family chat erupted. 11:30 p.m., brother. 11:32 p.m., Mom. 11:33 p.m., Dad. Before I tell you what each of them said, and what happened when they arrived at the lake the next morning, tell me, what time is it where you are? Where are you watching from? And what's the weather like there? I'm curious to see how far this story travels. My brother's name was Ryan, and for most of our adult lives, he had treated my reliability like a family utility, something that should always be available, never thanked, and never switched off. My younger sister, Sophie, was different in style, but not in expectation. Ryan demanded. Sophie smiled, hinted, and waited for me to solve whatever problem she had placed in front of me. My parents called this keeping the family together. What they meant was that I should absorb the cost of everyone else's comfort. The lakeside property had belonged to my grandmother. When she died 7 years earlier, she left it to me, not because she loved my siblings less, but because I had spent nearly every weekend of her final 2 years driving her to appointments, repairing the house, paying overdue taxes, and managing the small rental business she had built around it. Her will was clear. The property was mine. Still, the week after the funeral, Dad stood in the kitchen and said, "Of course, we'll all keep using it like before." I should have corrected him then. Instead, I nodded. That single nod became years of free weekends, unpaid cleaning, damaged furniture, last-minute parties, and messages asking why the dock lights were not working. Ryan once brought 12 friends without telling me, broke a bedroom door, and sent me a photo with the caption, "Your place survived." Sophie held an engagement brunch there and introduced the property to her future in-laws as our family lake house. My parents never asked whether I minded. They praised me for being generous whenever they wanted more and called me controlling whenever I asked for notice. The same pattern followed us everywhere. When Mom needed surgery, I coordinated her appointments and covered the portion insurance did not pay. When Dad's truck died, I loaned him money and never saw it again. When Ryan lost his job, I hired him as operations manager for the rental business because Dad said unemployment was destroying his confidence. When Sophie's wedding venue required a larger deposit, I advanced it from my personal savings after she promised to repay me in 3 months. 18 months later, she was still posting dress fittings while avoiding the subject. My husband, Daniel, noticed what I refused to name. He never demanded that I cut them off. He simply asked questions that made silence uncomfortable. Why did Ryan have a company card when I handled the bookings? Why did my parents expect us to host every holiday, but complain that our children were too energetic? Why was I paying for an August mountain trip for people who rarely remembered my birthday? The final answer arrived 2 weeks before Father's Day. We had dinner at my parents' house. Our 10-year-old daughter, Lily, brought a school project she had built with Daniel, a wooden model of a suspension bridge. She wanted to show my father because he had once worked in construction. Ryan barely looked up before saying, "Careful, Lily. In this family, your mom likes to build things so she can remind everyone she owns them." The adults laughed. Lily did not understand the joke, but she understood the tone. She quietly folded the project board and put it under her chair. Daniel looked at me, waiting to see whether I would defend her. I did, but too softly. I said Ryan's comment was unnecessary. Ryan rolled his eyes. Dad told everyone to relax. Mom changed the subject. Sophie whispered that I was making dinner awkward. On the drive home, Lily asked, "Why does Uncle Ryan act like he doesn't like us?" I had no answer that a child should have to hear. The next morning, Daniel reviewed the business account because a vendor payment had failed. He found several charges that had nothing to do with the property: expensive dinners, concert tickets, a weekend hotel, and a cash withdrawal Ryan had labeled dock maintenance. The total was more than $12,000 over 6 months. When Daniel asked Ryan for receipts, Ryan told him to stay out of family business. That was the phrase that changed everything. Daniel was family when they needed his truck, his labor, or his professional advice. He became an outsider the moment he asked where the money went. My children were grandchildren when my parents wanted holiday photos. They became your side of the family when their feelings complicated the adults' fun. Even after that, I still planned Father's Day. I ordered food, booked a boat, arranged a photographer, and prepared a surprise video using old family clips. I also finalized the August mountain trip, spending nearly $28,000 between travel points, deposits, and cash. I told myself the trip might repair something. I told myself one perfect weekend could prove that we still belonged. Then Ryan sent the message telling us to stay home while they continued planning how to enjoy everything I had paid for. Have you ever wondered whether some people love you, or only the version of you that makes their lives easier? That question sat in front of me at 11:29 p.m., right beside the button marked Confirm Changes. Ryan called first. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. Then Mom called. Then Dad. Their names stacked across my screen so quickly that the phone seemed to vibrate without stopping. No one asked whether I was all right. Every message was about the trip. Ryan wrote, "What did you do to the reservations?" Mom wrote, "Jessica, put everything back before your father sees this." Dad had already seen it. His message arrived 1 minute later. "You don't punish the whole family because your feelings got hurt." I read that sentence twice. In his mind, excluding my husband and children was a joke. Removing access to something I had purchased was punishment. Daniel came into the kitchen when he heard the notifications. He had been upstairs helping Lily and our 6-year-old son Caleb finish their Father's Day cards. I handed him the phone. He read the thread without changing expression, then placed it on the counter. "Are you sure?" "Nee," he asked. It was the first time anyone had asked what I wanted instead of telling me what I owed. I opened the reservation details again. The train tickets were refundable until midnight. The cabin deposit could be transferred. The rental vehicles could be canceled without penalty. I had booked the trip as a gift, not signed a contract promising to finance adults who openly rejected my family. I canceled nothing that belonged to them because none of it did. I simply stopped giving away what belonged to me. "I'm sure," I said. Then I went further, but not recklessly. I opened the Father's Day planning folder and looked at every item. The catering order was in my name. The boat rental was in my name. The photographer was in my name. The grocery delivery, gate access, and cleaning service were all connected to my account. I did not cancel the gathering to create a spectacle. I canceled my participation in it. I sent one message to the group. Since my family is not welcome, my property, accounts, vendors, and money will not be participating either. Please make your own arrangements. Ryan responded immediately. "You're insane." Sophie added, "This is exactly why we wanted a peaceful day." Mom wrote, "After everything we've done for you." That line almost worked. It pulled me back toward every childhood birthday, every ride to school, every meal at their table. For a moment, guilt rose so quickly that I nearly reopened the travel site. Then I looked through the glass door into the dining room. Lily's bridge project sat on a chair where she had left it after dinner at my parents' house. One side had come loose during the drive home. Daniel had placed the broken piece beside it, waiting for her to decide whether she wanted to repair it. I thought about how often I had repaired things my family kept breaking, then thanked them for letting me do it. I called the caterer and explained that the event host had changed. I released the reservation and paid the staff the agreed cancellation fee because their time mattered. I canceled the boat and photographer. I changed the gate code through the property management system, but I did not hide what I was doing. The family chat received the automated notice that all guest codes had been deactivated. I emailed them a list of nearby public parks and restaurants still taking reservations. Ryan called again. This time, I answered. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted before I spoke. "Dad has been looking forward to tomorrow for weeks." "So were my children." "That's different." The words came out too quickly for him to take them back. I asked, "How?" He went silent for 2 seconds. Then he said Daniel had made everyone uncomfortable by questioning business expenses. He said Lily was too sensitive. Caleb was loud, and I turned every gathering into a performance about how much work I had done. "You use money to control people," he said. "No," I replied. "I used money to avoid admitting that none of you respected me." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "You'll change your mind by morning." "I won't." "You always do." That was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. He was not confident because he believed he was right. He was confident because history had taught him that I would surrender. After the call, I created a folder on my laptop titled Separation. I added the property deed, tax records, loan agreements, company statements, screenshots of the group chat, and every receipt connected to the August trip. I also downloaded the business card transactions Daniel had flagged. My intention was not yet to accuse anyone publicly. I wanted facts before emotion could be used against me. At 12:14 a.m., Sophie sent me a private message. "Please fix this." Ryan was joking, and Mom and Dad only liked it because they didn't want an argument. I replied, "Liking cruelty to avoid an argument is still choosing a side." She wrote back, "So you're really going to ruin Father's Day?" I looked again at the handmade cards on the table. "No," I answered. "I'm going to spend it with the family that was told not to come." I muted the chat, closed the laptop, and went upstairs. I did not sleep much, but for the first time, I was not awake rehearsing an apology. I was awake realizing that the next morning would reveal whether they missed me or merely missed everything I supplied. At 7:08 the next morning, the property camera notified me that someone was at the gate. I did not open the live feed immediately. I was in our kitchen making pancakes while Caleb drew a mustache on Daniel's card and Lily repaired the loose section of her bridge. The three of them were laughing. No one was measuring my value by how quickly I solved a problem. The gate notification came again. Then my phone rang. Dad said, "The code isn't working." "I deactivated the guest codes last night." "You can't lock your own parents out of the family lake house." "It isn't the family lake house. Grandma left it to me, and I have paid every expense since." He lowered his voice as though reasonableness could erase what had happened. "Your brother said something stupid. Don't turn it into a war." "I didn't declare a war. I accepted the invitation to stay home." Behind him, I heard Ryan shouting that the food was probably already inside. Sophie was asking whether the boat company had arrived. Mom said my name in the exhausted tone she used whenever my boundaries created work for her. Dad continued, "At least let us in for today. Will Daniel and the kids be welcomed and treated respectfully?" There was a pause. It lasted long enough to answer me. Then Ryan took the phone. "This is Dad's day, not your therapy session." I ended the call. They remained at the gate for 23 minutes. The camera recorded Ryan walking back and forth, waving his arms at the keypad. Sophie's fiancé and his parents stood beside their car in formal summer clothes, watching the argument they had been invited into without warning. My mother tried several old codes. Dad sat in the passenger seat, staring forward. At 7:41, Ryan posted on social media that his unstable sister had locked an elderly father out of a property that belonged to the family. He did not mention the message. He did not mention that my father was 63, healthy enough to play golf 3 times a week, or that I had sent them alternatives the night before. For 10 minutes, relatives reacted exactly as Ryan expected. An aunt called me selfish. A cousin wrote that family should come before money. Then Daniel asked whether I wanted him to respond. I said no. Instead, I posted one screenshot beneath Ryan's public statement. It showed his message, my parents' reactions, and my 2-word reply. I added one sentence. They told my husband and children not to attend an event at my property, paid for through my accounts, and expected the event to continue without us. I did not insult anyone. I did not explain years of history. I let the screenshot carry the weight. The comments changed almost immediately. My aunt deleted hers. A cousin asked Ryan why he had called my children your side of the family. Sophie's future mother-in-law commented, "We were not told any of this." Ryan removed the post, but screenshots had already traveled beyond his control. By then, the family had relocated to my parents' house. The photographer had been canceled. The boat was gone. The catered breakfast never arrived. They had no groceries because Mom had assumed I had handled them, and Ryan had invited 14 people based on the schedule I created. They ordered food from a diner, but the delivery estimate was nearly 2 hours. Sophie's fiancé's parents left after 20 minutes. 2 cousins went home. Dad's surprise video could not be played because it was stored on my laptop. None of those inconveniences would have mattered in a healthy family. They could have laughed, made sandwiches, and enjoyed one another. The disaster came from the fact that the celebration had never been built on closeness. It had been built on my unpaid labor. Once that labor disappeared, there was nothing underneath but blame. At 9:16, Mom sent a photo of Dad sitting alone at the dining table. "Look what you've done," she wrote. I nearly responded. Then I noticed a folded card near his hand. It was not one of the cards my children had made. Those were still in our kitchen because he had supported excluding them. I put the phone down and handed Daniel his breakfast. Around noon, Sophie called. Her voice was tight. She said Ryan and Dad were fighting because Ryan had promised the gate issue would be fixed. Dad had discovered the trip was no longer available. Mom was crying over the public screenshot. Sophie's fiancé had asked why she had laughed at the original message instead of defending 2 children. "Everyone is turning on each other," she said. "No," I told her. "Everyone is finally facing the part I used to absorb." She asked me to delete the screenshot. I agreed to remove it after Ryan deleted every post about me and issued a correction. He refused. He said apologizing publicly would make him look guilty. "You are guilty," I said. He grabbed Sophie's phone and shouted that I had humiliated the family for attention. I asked whether humiliation felt worse when other people could see it. He hung up. That afternoon, I took Daniel, Lily, and Caleb to a small restaurant across town. We gave Daniel his cards. Lily showed him the repaired bridge. On the way home, she asked whether Grandpa was angry with us. I told her, "Grandpa is facing a choice. He can be angry that we protected ourselves, or he can be sorry that he helped hurt us." Children understand fairness faster than adults who benefit from avoiding it. Lily nodded and said, "Then I hope he chooses sorry." So did I. But by sunset, the business records gave me a reason to doubt that regret would be the worst thing my family faced. Sunday evening, after the children were asleep, Daniel and I reviewed the rental company's accounts. I had expected careless spending. I had not expected a system. Ryan had used the company card for personal purchases, then attached altered descriptions to the transactions. A steakhouse dinner became vendor relations. A hotel weekend became storm inspection. Concert tickets were listed as guest entertainment. although the property had been closed that week. Several withdrawals had no receipts at all. Worse, he had redirected 2 rental payments into an account I did not recognize before moving smaller amounts back into the business. The visible total was $46,380. The full amount might be higher. For years, my parents had insisted Ryan needed the management position because he was rebuilding his life. I had given him access with limits, but I had not audited him aggressively because every question became a family crisis. Daniel had warned me that trust without verification was not kindness. It was exposure. At 8:30 Monday morning, I called our accountant and attorney. I froze Ryan's company card, removed his administrative permissions, and requested a formal forensic review. I also informed the booking platform that he no longer represented the property. These were not revenge fantasies. They were the minimum actions required of an owner once possible theft had been discovered. At 8:47, Ryan called. "You shut me out of my job. I suspended your access pending an audit." "You can't do that. I own the company. Dad gave me that position." "Dad does not own the company." He changed tactics. He said the charges were reimbursements. He said receipts had been misplaced. He said the redirected payments were a temporary solution because the business account had been too slow. Each explanation contradicted the one before it. Then he said, "You're doing this because of one text." "No. The text made me stop protecting you from scrutiny." That frightened him more than anger would have. By noon, my parents were at my house. I spoke to them on the porch because I did not want raised voices around the children. Mom carried a folder of old family photographs as though memories were evidence. Dad looked exhausted, but his first question was not about the missing money. "Can you stop the audit until we sort this out privately?" I asked whether he already knew. He stared at the porch railing. Mom answered for him. They knew Ryan had used the card occasionally. They believed the amounts were small. Dad had told him to pay everything back before the end of the year. "You knew he was taking business money," I said. Dad corrected me. "Borrowing." "Without permission, false labels, or repayment?" "He's your brother." "And I'm your daughter." Mom stepped closer and told me families survive by giving one another grace. I asked where that grace had been when Ryan excluded my children and they approved it in front of everyone. She said the message was cruel, but unrelated. It was not unrelated. The same belief connected everything. Ryan could take because I would cover the loss. He could insult because I would restore the peace. My parents could support him because I would remain dependable. They had mistaken my endurance for consent. I opened the ledger on my tablet and showed them 6 years of payments. Property taxes, repairs, their medical bills, Ryan's salary, Sophie's wedding deposit, the canceled trip. The total of my direct financial support exceeded $168,000, not counting unpaid work. Mom began to cry. Dad said displaying the number made love look transactional. "I'm showing you the number because you called me selfish the first night I stopped paying." Then I told them the new terms. Ryan would remain suspended. The audit would continue. Free family use of the property was over. Anyone who wanted to stay would book through the same system as other guests, subject to availability and rules. I would no longer fund vacations, parties, vehicles, or deposits. Existing personal loans would be documented with repayment schedules. My parents could choose to maintain a relationship with us, but access to my children required a direct apology to Daniel and to them. Dad asked what would happen if the audit proved Ryan had taken the money. "That depends on whether he returns it and cooperates." "And if he doesn't?" "I'll follow my attorney's advice." Mom called that a threat. "No," I said. "It's the first consequence he couldn't transfer to me." Before leaving, Dad placed the folder of photographs on the porch table. On top was a picture from a Father's Day years earlier. I was carrying food while everyone else sat near the water. I remembered the day clearly, but what struck me now was my expression. I was smiling toward the camera, waiting for recognition that never came. Mom said, "You'll regret tearing this family apart." I handed the folder back. A family that stays together only because one person accepts every injury is already broken. That night, Sophie sent a message asking to meet alone. She said she knew why Ryan had wanted Daniel and the children excluded. She also said the missing money was only part of what he had been hiding. Sophie arrived Tuesday evening without her engagement ring. I noticed it before she sat down. She folded her hands beneath the kitchen table and asked whether Daniel was home. I said he was upstairs with the children. She looked relieved, which told me her visit was not an apology yet. It was damage control. Her fiancé, Mark, had seen the screenshot before Ryan deleted his post. He had also learned that the deposit for their wedding venue came from me, not from Sophie's savings as she had claimed. He asked what else she had hidden. Their argument ended with him taking several days away to reconsider the wedding. Sophie blamed Ryan first. She said he had pressured everyone to exclude us. Then she blamed Dad, who had wanted Father's Day to be peaceful. Then Mom, who believed Daniel would confront Ryan at the lake. She moved responsibility around the table like a hot plate until I stopped her. "What did you do?" I asked. She looked down. I agreed. "Why?" "Because Daniel had found the charges. Ryan believed he would ask Dad about them during the celebration. Ryan wanted one day to convince our parents that the expenses were legitimate before anyone confronted him. My children were included in the rejection because excluding Daniel alone would have looked suspicious. Calling all four of us, your side of the family, made it sound like a personality conflict, instead of an attempt to keep a witness away. The cruelty had been camouflage. Sophie admitted she knew about some of the spending. Ryan had paid a portion of her wedding expenses through the company account, telling her he would replace it after receiving a bonus. There was no bonus. She had stayed quiet because reporting him would expose her benefit. "How much?" I asked. $8,000. I felt anger, but beneath it was something colder. Sophie had watched Lily hide her bridge project. She had heard my daughter ask why her uncle disliked us. She had participated anyway, because honesty threatened her wedding budget. Sophie began crying. She said she never intended to hurt the children. I told her intention did not erase a choice made repeatedly. Then she asked what she needed to do to make me stop the audit. There it was. Not, "How do I repair what I did?" Not, "How can I apologize to Lily?" She wanted a transaction because transactions were the only language our family had practiced with me. "You can't stop it," I said, "but you can decide whether you tell the truth before the documents do." I asked her to write a statement for the accountant detailing every business-funded wedding expense she knew about. I asked her to return any unused portion of my venue advance and arrange repayment for the rest. Finally, I asked her to repeat the truth during a family meeting with Ryan and our parents present. She recoiled. "Ryan will never forgive me," I said. "You're asking the sister you betrayed to protect you from the brother you protected." For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she took out her phone, opened her banking app, and transferred the remaining venue funds, $3,200, to me. She emailed the accountant while sitting at my table. Her written statement identified 3 charges and 1 transfer. The total connected to her wedding was $9,460. Before leaving, she asked whether Mark and she were finished. "That's his decision," I said, "but he deserves the truth before he makes it." At the door, she finally said the words I had expected when she arrived. "I'm sorry." I asked. "For what?" She swallowed. "For laughing. For letting them call your husband and kids outsiders. For taking money and pretending I didn't know where it came from. And for coming here because I was scared for myself before I was sorry for you." It was not enough to restore trust, but it was the first honest sentence she had given me. The family meeting was scheduled for Wednesday at the lakeside property. Ryan objected to the location, claiming I wanted to display power. I chose it because the office contained the original records and security logs. I also wanted all of them to stand inside the place they had called ours, while being forced to acknowledge the work and ownership they had erased. That evening, Dad sent me a private message. "Please remember, he's my son." I replied, Then remember, I'm your daughter before asking me to disappear for him again. By Wednesday morning, the accountant's preliminary report had raised the suspected total to $71,240. Ryan arrived at the lake believing the family would pressure me into silence. He did not know Sophie had already provided a statement. He did not know the locks had been changed. And he did not know my attorney was waiting inside. Ryan walked into the office smiling as if he had already won. My parents followed him. Mom would not look at me. Dad looked at the attorney, then at Sophie, and understood that this was not an emotional argument he could end by demanding peace. The accountant placed copies of the preliminary report on the table. Ryan refused to sit. He said the meeting was an ambush. My attorney explained that no one was required to stay, but the company would proceed based on the records whether he participated or not. Ryan began with the same story he had told me: reimbursements, missing receipts, temporary transfers. Then Sophie placed her written statement beside the report. His face changed. He called her a traitor. She flinched but did not retract anything. She admitted that wedding expenses had been paid through the business and that Ryan had asked the family to exclude Daniel because Daniel had discovered the charges. Mom covered her mouth. Dad turned toward Ryan and asked whether it was true. Ryan looked at me instead. You did this. You turned everyone against me because you couldn't handle a joke. I asked the accountant to read the total. $71,240 in unsupported or misrepresented transactions, subject to final review. The room became silent. The lake outside the office windows was calm, but inside, every hidden decision had finally reached shore. My attorney outlined the options. Ryan could cooperate, sign a repayment agreement secured against his share of an investment account our parents had created for him, and resign from the company. If he refused, the matter would be referred for civil recovery and possible criminal review. I was not offering mercy without accountability, and I was not demanding suffering for entertainment. I was giving him one chance to return what he had taken. Dad urged him to sign. Mom cried. Ryan accused them of choosing money over their son. Dad answered, "No. We chose you over your sister for years. This is where it led." It was the first time he had said it aloud. Ryan signed. He lost the management job, the company card, and free access to the property. His investment account covered part of the debt. My parents sold the fishing boat they rarely used to repay money. Dad admitted he had encouraged Ryan to treat as a family resource. Ryan's wife, after learning about the spending and public lies, moved with their son to her sister's house while they entered counseling. Sophie and Mark postponed their wedding. She took a second job and began repaying me monthly. None of those consequences came from a trap I created. They came from truths the family had delayed until the cost grew larger than denial. My parents apologized to Daniel in person. They apologized to Lily and Caleb without asking the children to comfort them. Dad told Lily that her bridge was impressive and that he should have defended her. She listened, then said, "You should have." He nodded. I did not restore the old relationship. Apology opened a door. It did not erase what stood behind it. For 1 year, contact remained limited. No unannounced visits, no money, no access to the lake outside ordinary bookings, no conversations in which my children were treated as bargaining tools. My parents followed the rules because they finally understood that ignoring them meant losing us. Ryan sent several angry messages before I blocked him. Months later, he mailed a handwritten apology. It contained no excuses, but I was not ready to answer. Forgiveness, I learned, is not the same as renewed access. That August, Daniel, Lily, Caleb, and I took the mountain trip. The cabin had 4 empty rooms because I had removed the others, but the quiet did not feel lonely. Lily displayed her repaired bridge model on the mantel. Caleb claimed the window seat on every train. We laughed without waiting for anyone's approval. On our final night, I received a photo from Dad. He and Mom were eating a simple dinner at home. His message read, "Learning to plan for ourselves. I'm sorry we made your work invisible." I believed he was sorry. I also believed consequences were part of that apology. For years, I thought revenge meant making people feel the pain they had caused me. What I finally gave them was something harder: a life without the labor, money, silence, and protection they had mistaken for their right. Once I stepped away, every choice they had made spread outward like ripples, touching careers, marriages, reputations, and trust. Their punishment was not that I destroyed the family. It was that I stopped holding together the version of it that was destroying me. So tell me honestly, when relatives remember your value only after losing access to everything you provide, do you forgive them quickly, or let them live long enough with the consequences to understand what they did?
We hope the story gave you a satisfying ending and thoughtful lesson. This video is completely fictional and created only for entertainment, education, and dramatic storytelling. May it remind you that your kindness is valuable, but it should never become a reason for others to cross your boundaries, dismiss your pain, or expect endless forgiveness without change.